What's up, y'all? So today I just wanted to dive in and speak about Sydney McLaughlin Levrone and really talk about the discussion around her not racing as frequently as fans and spectators would like, and see how this kind of compares to other athletes, how it compares to her previous seasons, other hurdlers, and really dive into why we're asking Sydney to race a lot more. But first things first, she's coming off the Olympic Games, winning the 400-meter hurdles, first woman in history to win back-to-back gold medals in the 400-meter hurdles, right? 2020 Tokyo, 2024 Paris. She then finished off her season at the Brussels Diamond League, running the 400 and the 200, of course, in non-Diamond League races. But I think she had a pretty successful season for all intents and purposes. I, of course, put her as my athlete of the year on the women's side. She really did some, amazing work throughout 2024. But how often did she actually run? Did she race frequently enough for us to, provide all this criticism where it's like, no, she needs to race more? How often did she run? Throughout the entire season, from April all the way to September, Sydney McLaughlin Levrone ran 15 individual races. Now, that does include heats, semis, and finals, but that's only at USA's and the Olympic Games. But at the end of the day, 15 races, and even more specifically, across different events. Yes, we do know that she ran the 400-meter hurdles at the Olympic Games, but that's only one of them. She also ran the 400 at the New York City Grand Prix. She also ran that at the Brussels Diamond League. She also ran the 200 meters on, 3 occasions throughout the season. Then she also ran 100-meter hurdles as well as a 4x100-meter relay. So we're talking about a lot of diversity throughout the entire season, a very full season as well, from April all the way down to September, and she's pretty much hitting a lot of the events that we want to see her run. Yes, we want to see her in the 400-meter hurdles and, striving for sub 50 seconds. Yes, we want to see her in the 400-meter dash, striving to break the American record and go even faster. She was really dipping her toes, 22.07 seconds at the LA Grand Prix. So she really did put herself out there throughout the year, but that's only the context of 2024 as an individual season. How does this compare to her previous seasons when running on the circuit? Now, she, of course, went pro after the 2018 season at Kentucky in the NCAA, so we're going to ignore 2018. But looking at 2019, that was her first full year as a pro, and she was really out there. She ran 14 races throughout the 2019 season. That included a few Diamond League races. Of course, that included the USA Championships as well as the World Championships in Doha that year, but 14 races. So already at that point, a little bit less than what she did in 2024. Now, let's move up. 2021, right? That was the Olympic year coming off the pandemic. She ran 15 races that year. Ran a lot of 100-meter hurdles, right? That was a time that she, had moved over to Bobby Kersee. She was kind of working on her hurdle form, trying to fix things up. So early in the season, she ran a couple 100-meter hurdles. I think indoor, she also ran the 60-meter hurdles at the New Balance Indoor Grand Prix in Staten Island. So she, of course, went on to win the Olympic gold in the 400 hurdles that year as well. But 15 races, very significant, matches up with what she did this year. Then 2022, this was a big downturn. Now, of course, at the World Championships in Eugene, we saw her run 50.68 seconds, immaculate world record, but she only ran 10 races throughout the entire season. I think she ran one race after the World Championships at the Hungary Continental Tour, but only 10 races. And I think for the most part, that might have been the year where everyone started to say, hey, Sydney, why are you not racing enough? Why are you not doing this and whatever, right? But regardless, 10 races. Now, in 2023, this is where things really went down. She only competed in 6 races throughout that season. 6 races. And even more notable is that, remember, in 2023, just last year, she actually was transitioning over into the 400, right? She, said that she's going to focus on the 400. She eventually went on to run it at the USA Championships. That's where she almost broke the American record, 48.74 seconds. But then she got injured after that. She was planning to run at the Monaco Diamond League, and then she was also planning to run at the, of course, World Championships in Budapest. But she did get injured, wasn't able to compete in Monaco, and ended her season. So that, in theory, would have added at least 5 more races. You would have had the 400 in Monaco, you would have had 3 rounds at the World Championships in the 400, and then you also probably would have had the 4x4. So 5 more races, you're talking about, 11 races for 2023, but because of injury, 6 races. Then, like I said, 2024, 15 races throughout the entire season. So when you're kind of comparing every single season that she's had as a pro, 2024, she actually raced the most that she ever has, only equal to 2021. So there's, of course, that misnomer that she doesn't compete frequently. I think that did start a little bit in 2022 when she only ran 10 races that year, setting that world record, but she's been really stepping things up. So shout out to Sydney, but how does this then compare to other athletes? We've seen a ton of athletes run throughout the Olympic season, right? From indoors, we had the World Indoor Championships, Olympic Games, Diamond League final, all that. But how does Sydney's season of 15 races compare to some of the other top athletes? Look at this list. First off, Rai Benjamin. He ran 10 races this year. Now, he's probably notorious for not racing as frequently as well, but 10 races. Quincy Hall also only ran 11 races throughout 2024, and this includes heats, semifinals, and finals. So yes, Quincy, he did get injured after the Olympic Games, right? He wasn't able to run on the 4x4. He also didn't run any of the Diamond League meets afterwards. So give or take, you give him the 4x4, you give him, 3 Diamond League races, let's say, after the Olympic Games. That gives you 4 more races, which gives him 15 in theory, but 11 races for Quincy Hall. Paulino, 400 meter, champion. I just check out the video that I just did on her. She ran 13 races this year. Karsten Warholm, who also did an indoor season, he ran 13 races, including that Mondo versus Karsten race that we saw in Zurich. Rochelle Clayton, 400 hurdler, 15 races. Alison Dos Santos, he ran 16 races. Look at someone like Sha'Carri Richardson, another top star in the sport in terms of popularity, notoriety, right, name recognition. She ran 17 races. So it's not a drastic difference from what Sydney did. But then you start to get up into, some of the other athletes. Look at someone like Grant Holloway. We see Grant Holloway all the time on the circuit. He even ran a full indoor season. This year, he ran 23 races, including indoors. If we only include outdoors, Grant Holloway ran 15 races. Only outdoors. Very similar to Sydney McLaughlin Levrone. But what about some of the others who are much higher around on this list, right? Someone like a Julian Alfred. She had 25 races, indoors and out. Cut it out only to outdoors, 17 races. Devin Charlton, 26 races, indoors and out. World indoor champion, world record holder in the 60-meter hurdles. But if you only look at outdoors, she only had 13 races. But looking at the top of this list, guys like Noah Lyles, Letsili Teboho, women like Femke Bol, Masai Russell, they are almost like the outliers on this list. Noah Lyles, 28 races indoors and outdoors, only 20 outdoors. Teboho, he only ran outdoors, but he did start all the way back in, I think, March, down in South Africa. 28 races throughout the season. Femke Bol is a huge outlier. 32 races, indoors and out, and then outdoors, she had 23 races. And then, of course, Masai Russell, also a massive outlier, 34 races, which includes 22 outdoors. So as you can kind of see, when we're looking at some of these top athletes, Sydney McLaughlin Levrone is not too far outside the realm of, how often an athlete actually competes. And again, we're talking about the best of the best. Most, if not all of these athletes medaled at the Olympic Games, right? Either got gold, got silver, got bronze. These are the top athletes in the world. Sydney McLaughlin Levrone is right in the same range as many of these athletes, especially when only talking about an outdoor season. Indoors, of course, is going to change things, but this is only another data set. How does this actually compare to some of the other hurdlers that we've seen in the world? Now, of course, she does get strongly compared to Femke Bol. And like I said, Femke Bol is a massive outlier, not only as a hurdler, but also as an athlete as a whole. She runs indoors. She also runs extremely frequently outdoors. Every single year, she's hitting 29 plus races every single year. Again, 33 races in 2024, and then outdoors she ran 23 races. So you can see that Femke Bol is very much outside the norm of what any athlete is going to be doing. So Sydney to Femke is not a great comparison, at least in terms of the frequency that they're running races. But who are some of the other hurdlers? Dalilah Muhammad. Dalilah Muhammad, throughout her entire career, most of her career, right? Going back to, let's say, 2016, when she first won her Olympic gold, 18 races that year. But then in the subsequent years, she was hovering around 14 to 16 races. So just right in line with what Sydney McLaughlin Levrone was doing in 2024. You have some other athletes, someone like an Ashley Spencer. Remember Ashley Spencer in 2016? She got the bronze medal in the 400 hurdles. She ran about 20 races outdoors. You have someone like Riciana Tracy. She also did very well in 2016. She ran 16 races that year. What about Rochelle Clayton and Shamir Little back in 2023, right? Clayton ran 17 races outdoors, as well as Shamir Little, 17 races outdoors. So I think what I'm getting at with, comparison to the other hurdlers and also to some of the other athletes is that Sydney doesn't race infrequently. I think we have a skewed perception of how often Sydney races because we want to see her race a lot more. She's pretty much right in line with how often other athletes, and not only other athletes, but also other hurdlers compete throughout their seasons. But the last point I do want to dive into is why we do tend to underplay Sydney. Why is it that we do tend to come at her and say, yo, you need to race more. We don't see you often. You're one of the biggest stars in the sport, so you should be racing everywhere. Why is that? Well, a couple different reasons. I think one of the reasons is we want to see her racing in Europe more frequently. We don't see her on the Diamond League circuit like we see a Femke Bol so frequently. We don't see her on the Diamond League circuit like a Shamir Little, like a Rochelle Clayton, like an Anna Cockrell. I think that's one of the big gripes. Diamond League, of course, as of now, is still the premier, league for world athletics and in track and field. So if we're not seeing her on that circuit, then that's going to skew our perception. Wait, Sydney isn't running. You're running at this quote unquote little meet in the United States. But, I think that's one point. The other point is the comparison to Femke Bol. Femke Bol is, of course, the number 2 all-time in the 400 hurdles. Outside of Dalilah Muhammad, Femke Bol has been Sydney's quote-unquote biggest competition, even though, unfortunately, there's just no competition for Sydney. But because Femke races so frequently, we're going to be comparing Sydney to Femke. Everyone's going to be saying, why do we see Femke but not Sydney? Why do we see Femke but not Sydney? But Femke is always going to be out there literally everywhere around the world. She's going to be at almost every single Diamond League possible. She's going to be at tons of Continental Tours and tons of meets that are not even Continental Tours. Remember that race in Switzerland where she ran her 50.9 at altitude? That was, just another meet that she went to. That wasn't Diamond League, but she's running so frequently there. She also runs at Europeans. So I think the comparison from Femke to Sydney is going to also skew our perception of how often someone like Sydney does race. On top of that, I do think there's an aspect of wanting to see Sydney run in the 400 hurdles a lot more than she does. Now, she did run the 400 hurdles early in the season down in Atlanta. Then she went to USA's, of course, ran those 3 rounds, then went to the Olympic Games, ran those 3 rounds. So she ran 7 races in the 400 hurdles and then a couple other races. So I think we would like to see her run the 400 hurdles a lot more, considering she's breaking the world records. We know that she's able to run fast. We want to see her run fast, but she does, or at least this year, has dipped and dabbled into other events. But the other thing, and I think the big point that I noted earlier, is that in 2022, when she broke the world record running 50.68 seconds, and that season she only ran 10 races in total, including all the rounds. I think that really gave us the idea that we want to see more Sydney. We want to see her run these fast times as frequently as possible. 50.68. It's going to get our minds thinking about what is possible. We're still to this day thinking about sub 50 seconds in the 400 meter hurdles. So because of how infrequently she ran that season, the season that she really had a massive, kind of breakthrough in the event, I think that really has been pushing this narrative that, she needs to race more, even though she's raced very frequently this season. And when I say like breakthrough in the event, yes, she's been breaking through year after year, even in 2021 at USA Olympic trials, and then of course at the Olympic Games, where she broke the world record on both occasions. I think there was still an aspect where Dalilah Muhammad was still in very, very good form. Go back to that Tokyo Olympic final in the 400 hurdles. Dalilah Muhammad was leading off the 10th hurdle. So even though Sydney won gold and she was really, going for everything at that point, 2022, when she ran 50 seconds, that was a true breakthrough. And because she competed so infrequently, that kind of, I think, skewed our perception based on what she's actually doing now. So all that said, though, I do just want to highlight that some of the things that we've been asking Sydney to do, she has been doing it. Think about it. We've been asking her to run the 400. She attempted last year, but she got injured. This year, she ran the 400 a couple times. At the New York City Grand Prix, she ran 48.75, almost breaking the American record, which was her target. She didn't get it, but she again attempted at the Brussels Diamond League. Now, the weather was really cold in Brussels, but she actually did go for it again. She could have just ended her season at the Olympic Games. So I do want to give a little bit of credit to Sydney for actually going out there and attempting to race in these different events, not just the 400 hurdles like we always see her doing. We would love to see her more there, but I think she's doing very, very well. 200 meters. Who would have thought we would have seen Sydney McLaughlin Levrone running 22.07 seconds in the 200 this year? Huge performance that we would have never gotten if she didn't step her toes into it. So overall, I just want to give Sydney a little bit of grace, and I think we need to adjust our perspective just a little bit. I know people are going to have some different opinions and different thoughts about why she doesn't race as frequently, or, why she should be racing more frequently. Think about next year. She's going to be in Grand Slam track. So we're going to be seeing her at least 8 times. On every weekend that Grand Slam track has as a competition, she's going to be racing the 400 hurdles and the 400. So 8 times minimum, plus USA, championships, right? Plus the world championships. So we're talking about 8 plus 6. We're talking about 14 times throughout the year minimum. Listen, let me know what you think about Sydney and how often she races throughout the season. Do you think that 15 races is enough for Sydney? Do you think she should be running indoors? Do you think she should be running as much as Femke, right? 30 plus races throughout the year? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Always appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.